Hello and welcome back to Season 5 of the MRX Lab podcast, the show from FlexMR where this year we're on a mission to uncover the connections between data, decision making, and how to navigate a fast changing business landscape. Today's episode is set to be a fascinating discussion as we explore what researchers can learn from marketing and entrepreneurship, two critical leadership skills for translating data into action and ultimately impact. To do that, I'm joined by Hannah Pira, co-founder of ABH Historia and researcher at Memu Open Research Campus. Hannah, welcome to the show.
Hi, Chris.
Hi, Hannah. So before we get to our main topic today about marketing, entrepreneurship, research, and the connections between all these things, could you tell our listeners a bit about yourself and your experience in research and marketing?
Okay. So thank you, Chris, for having me here. Hello, everyone. I am Hannah Pira. To share a little bit about myself, I took up Bachelor of Science in Entrepreneurship, minor in Culinary Arts, in Enderun colleges in the Philippines. So after graduating, I started a consulting company called ABH Storia, and we did marketing and financial services to small, medium enterprises in the Philippines. While I was fulfilling, while it was fulfilling to do what we were passionate about, it was difficult to gain new clients because we were just fresh graduates. So we kept at it for a while, but later on, we decided to close the company and gain more industry experience. As for me, I joined the Office of Career Services at Enderun Colleges as a supervisor. I manage the career related and alumni events with international internship placements in Europe and Asia. I was at this job where I learned about the need for and importance of people in sustainability because this is where all types of industries are heading towards to. Also, this is where I decided to transition my career path into become a researcher. So after 2 years in working at Enderun Colleges, I decided to apply for the graduate program in sustainability science at the University of Tokyo through the university recommended MEX scholarship. And this is where I met Chris. And I remember telling him how happy I was when I found out his background was in also in business. When I joined the program, everyone was from all kinds of disciplines and backgrounds except business. So there we go. That's a little background about myself.
That's great. So I guess my first question to you, I want to draw on this connection or that switch that you made from um, entrepreneur through to working in career services and international placements, and then taking those skills and becoming a researcher. So I guess drawing on your experience as a marketer and entrepreneur, how has that helped you in your role as a researcher?
Oh, this is a really good question, actually. There are days when I actually think about how did I get here, all the way from being an entrepreneur to career placements, and then as a researcher. And then when I would look back and think about my journey, I would think about it all makes sense because this is where I've always wanted to be, and this is the journey I have gone through, and I'm here. So for me, it makes sense that I'm here because my drive is to always become a better member of society. And that's where it led me to where I am now. Um, so back when I was a marketer and entrepreneur, of course, all I ever thought about were the client's needs and how I'm going to keep the business running. While it was important to be people centric and financially stable, I have never thought of environmental impacts as important in running the business. It was always an afterthought, and truth be told, it was simply how the business is done in the environment I was in. And when you're in it, you don't see the fault in doing the same thing until you are introduced to a different way of doing things. So when I was a graduate student, my horizon widened. I learned about so many things about sustainability and how interconnected everything was. Unfortunately, there's no one way of doing things. So going back to how being an entrepreneur and marketer has helped me in my role as a researcher, I would say having the entrepreneurial mindset has given me the skill of finding problems and opportunities and think of ways how to solve them. Also, being quick to adapt to changing situations has really helped a lot. Also, while being a marketer helps me communicate important information that will resonate with the audience or stakeholders. These skills are both important for researchers because while research are skilled in doing research methods, there's a huge loss if the information isn't communicated properly.
Mm. I think that's definitely something a lot of us in market research and insight feel, where you'll spend kind of 6 to 9 months potentially working on a very large strategic project. And then at the end, that becomes 60 PowerPoint slides. People will sit down, listen to you for 30, 40 minutes, and then not really take it any further. The insight doesn't go beyond what happens in that debriefing. And I've got that kind of similar trajectory of now seeing life as an academic researcher and from that business background. And again, there's a lot of parallels in science communications. There's a lot of information which isn't translated into action. And as a marketer and a creative, what's your thought on how we can communicate research and findings better?
Oh, definitely. For me, I think it's important to keep those information on like a shelf, and then we can continue talking about it later on. It's like you've done this research for 6 months to 12 months, and then you don't simply forget about the data that you've collected through that entire process. So I think it's important to archive those information, put them on a hold, like shelf them first, and then you can go back to it when you need those information again. I think it's important to make use of those information as much as we can.
I think that's a really interesting point that gets overlooked really often. We often talk about how you make debriefs more creative or more impactful, or make people pay attention. We spoke to Lucy Davidson from Keena's Mustard recently on storytelling methods. Ian Stanfield from Specsavers on knowing your stakeholders ahead of time and using that to feed into how you present information to them. But actually, that kind of simple marketing point of repetition, awareness, repeating the same message is one that we could probably all stand to learn from. So switch gears a little bit. I'm going to flip that original question. How do you think your time as a researcher has helped you become a better marketer, if it has?
So, being a researcher has made me a better marketer in terms of now, of course, I think about more on the social, environmental, and economic impacts of doing things. So, I also notice that I tend to highlight the environmental impacts and sustainability when talking to people from businesses. Usually, when talking about business, they tend to highlight, oh, how much growth they've earned, how much developed they've done, but they rarely talk about their social impact and the environmental impact that their business has done. So I think during conversations, it's important for me as a researcher to bring those up so that people don't forget to discuss them.
I think this gets into a really interesting area where there's potentially this in the future a widened role for marketing. We tend to think of marketing as kind of the extension of Kotler's old 4Ps, market orientation. Think about what the consumer wants and then bring that, fulfill that demand. Whereas actually these skills around strategic communications, entrepreneurship, marketing, can actually be applied in a much wider variety of contexts. It's not just about that relationship between product and consumer. It's also about product and the environment, company, and social elements of society, the local communities. What stories are we communicating to all of these different groups of stakeholders that that don't get featured in that central thesis of marketing is about bringing a product to market and nothing else?
Yes.
So let's talk a bit about your work at Memu Open Research Campus. For our listeners, can you tell us what the Memu Open Research Campus is and what your role is?
Okay. So, all right. This month, I officially joined the rereading company that manages Memu Open Research Campus as a researcher, and I also assist with the business development. The campus is located in Taikicho, Obihiro, in Hokkaido, Japan, where Obihiro City is mainly known for its agriculture and dairy products. Then Taikicho, where the campus is located, is a 45-minute to an hour drive away, and it's closer to the fishing port, which is 15 minutes away from campus. So you can see how there is no convenience stores or vending machines nearby. So you would have to drive 15 minutes to the town to get whatever you need. So you can imagine how rural the place is. But for me, when you're here, when you visit here, those things would appear irrelevant because the landscape is truly fascinating. So it forces you to become present and appreciate nature and its seasons. Um, so here in Memu Open Research Campus, there's plenty of resources within the area that needs to be researched on. So we are doing a rereading resource process with two primary approach of grounding research and rooting research, which a third form of research called sprouting research can be undertaken. But yeah, aside from this, we have plenty of work in progress for the campus next year that will make it more open and accessible to the public to come and visit us here in Memu.
So for context for our listeners, Japan is where you're working, rural Hokkaido in Japan, is an area which suffers quite heavily from social issues like depopulation, a stagnant economy. And is it right to say that some of the work you're doing at the Open Research Campus is kind of about reinvigorating what the opportunity is for this place, for local people to bring in more resources to the area, but also to explore more sustainable, both economically and environmentally, ways of living in this remote rural location?
Oh, definitely. I think that's one of the main mission of this place is to help revitalize the area as well.
I think that's kind of this fascinating nexus between research, social impact, marketing, communications, because you need all of these things to work together to know, what opportunity there is, and then to tell people, to communicate that story to people, to bring in the funding, to bring in the attention that is going to actually have that uplift and combat some of these social issues. Based on some of your experiences as both a researcher and a marketer, how do you think these two groups can contribute to a more sustainable society?
Hmm. I think marketers and researchers can contribute to a more sustainable way by collaborating and discussing more. We have so much to learn from each other, and I think that's the way to go, because if we do things individually or by groups without collaborating with each other, I think there's a lot of overlap that aren't being discussed. So I think collaboration is really, really important.
Mm. And to add on to that, I suppose, in research, you've got this kind of great facility at producing new knowledge. And in marketing, you've got this great facility at persuasive communications and driving behavior change. Marketing isn't necessarily great at creating new knowledge, and research isn't necessarily great at communicating everything that we learn. So they are, despite the disconnect between the two, which I think you'd agree exists now, there's a lot of opportunity for them to complement each other.
Yes, I truly agree.
So similarly, do you think marketing needs to adapt in order to kind of meaningfully contribute or create sustainable change?
I think so. I think in order to bring more positive, sustainable change, marketing needs to be more mindful of what kind of value they bring to the society. It's not just, I think this will work. I think those thoughts need to be bounded by, you could say, academic research or, proven by facts. It's not just what you think as a marketer, it needs to be backed by science and information. So, I think bringing value, knowing what kind of value you bring to society would make a really good positive change.
Do you think, going back to that time you opened your own consulting company, with all the experiences you've had now, what do you think you do differently?
Ooh, I think there's so many things we could have done differently because we were doing things similarly to what everyone was doing. So if I knew about sustainability back then, I would have incorporated that with how we did our business and bringing that value to our clients and emphasizing that so that they see the value in it. Um, Unfortunately, I didn't know much more about it back then. So I felt like that was the missing puzzle that we needed in the business that could differentiate us from other consulting companies as well.
So sustainability as an opportunity as well, as something to differentiate yourself from the status quo, from what everyone else brings to the market.
Yes.
I think that's a great takeaway from this episode. But just before we wrap up, what is it that you would like our listeners to take away from this last 20 minutes?
Mm. Okay. For me, I think there are plenty of people who want to make a change in their respective industries. Find them and collaborate with each other. And when you feel like what you're doing currently doesn't resonate with you anymore, it's okay to change your path and you will find your calling or what you're meant to do eventually. So just be brave in doing what you need to do, and you are definitely capable of making the change for yourself. That's it. Thank you.
Excellent. Hannah, thank you so much for joining me today. It's been a pleasure to have you on the show.
Thank you so much, Chris.
And thank you to everybody listening as well. While we are out of time today, I will be back next month with the final episode of season 5, where we'll take one last deep dive into the frontiers of research and insight. But until then, I've been your host, Chris Martin, and this has been the MRX Lab.